The beat provision, tell us what this does.
It's not really supposed to beat anybody, but it's supposed to catch. It's a wonderful name they have for it. But it's supposed to catch money that's shifted abroad to escape U.S. taxes. Now that the U.S. tax rate is much lower, it's more compatible with the rest of the world, and we've moved away from the previous global taxation where whatever you make, wherever you make it, had to be taxed at the U.S. rate. Now, if you're making money overseas, there's a lower rate for your overseas. So with all these new, nicer provisions, it's supposed to catch the money you're trying to shift overseas only, such as, you know, some companies that have very few people in Ireland, but they book their sales through Ireland so they don't pay taxes. It's supposed to catch those. But it's catching these big banks, global banks, European, Asian banks that operate in the US, because right now, the way it's written, it's not clear whether gross or net movements between their affiliates overseas and in the U.S.
Because if it's gross, it could be a huge problem for them.
It could be a big problem, because what banks typically do is they borrow in a million places and they lend in other places, and in between those different countries and different units, they move the money around. So one unit owes money to another unit while it's borrowing from another unit. So when you net it all, intra-group movements, there isn't that much moving in one direction to the other. But if you don't net it and you're only looking what's going from the U.S. affiliate to the outside world, to Europe and other parts of the world, then you would have bigger numbers and their income would be inflated.
But we don't know at this point if it will be net or gross, or even what the impact of this will be, depending on which one it is.
Right. The language is unclear. If it's gross, that's when banks fear they'll be hit. If it's net, the analysts I've talked to, then it wouldn't be a problem, really. If they clarify and say, don't worry, we're only going to look at the net movement, then the banks wouldn't be hit. But they're reading it as, oh, what if it's gross? And some of the banks have already made announcements, Barclays, Credit Suisse, saying this will hurt them, but assuming it's gross.
So who decides?
The Treasury has some leeway in the law. Every couple of paragraphs it says the Treasury can further write rules explaining and detailing how these will be implemented. So they could write a rule saying what this really means in the law is that it's net movements and not gross, everything going out. If you have money coming into the country from overseas affiliate, then we would net it. Or Congress could pass a corrections law that they do once in a while after major legislation, making small technical changes.